Good morning. Today we're going to finish the book of Numbers. Cover chapter 35 and 36 today, and we'll be back on the same schedule with both readings. And I don't normally wish happy birthdays, but it's a happy birthday to Shirley in Fargo today, and Ruby out in Washington today, and a couple of others. Anyway, it's special day for some, and I don't do that very often. But anyway, in today's readings, God is speaking to Moses about the land for the Levites. I mean, the Levites don't inherit a lot of land, a specific region of their own. The promised land is divided into 11 plots, with 11 states, say, by what God has told them. But within each of those places, those 11 other places, there will be designated cities and lands surrounding those cities for the Levites. And the Levites are the priestly tribe. And so all total, there will be 48 cities within these 11 regions for the Levites, and each town or city that is designated for the Levites, the land will be measured out. Basically, I think it's 2,000 cubits, 2,000 cubits to each direction. And a cubit is about 18 inches, so it's not a real big area, but it's a large enough area for them to have their sheep and their cattle and some lands. And then six of these cities, I think it's only six. When I was reading it, it sounded like six, and it sounded like more. But some of these cities are sanctuary cities, where someone who has, they call it a slayer, someone who has unintentionally caused someone else to die. That these cities are safety sanctuaries for these people, that they can flee there and they can live safely without fear of retribution by relatives of the one who died, until they're able to have a trial. It doesn't mean they're free forever. And then it talks something about until a certain priest dies, and stuff. And then it goes on, starting in up to the end of verse 15, it's talking about those who commit kind of an unintentional death. But verse 16 starts out, if someone strikes another with an iron object and death ensues, he's a murderer, or with a stone in hand, or with a wooden club, or if you hide in waiting for someone to come and you hit them with a rock, the intentional death caused, or death that can be caused by a murder weapon, or a weapon that would be capable of causing death. These people then are murderers, and they should be put to death. They don't have the authority, they don't have the right to flee to a sanctuary city and then be protected until the time of a trial. Then in verse 22 again, but if someone pushes another without enmity, or hurls an object without lying in wait, or while handling a stone drops it unintentionally and causes this death, then they're not murderers. It's an accident. And then it says the congregation will judge between the slayer and the avenger of the blood in order, and so God is setting down a little bit, things maybe a little bit different than an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But, to make sure that the justice is served, but yet, on the other hand, that someone who has done something innocently isn't unfairly punished. And I just read a deal the other day, or maybe just last night, I think it was, that, they figure roughly at least 4% of the people that are in prison, for murder are innocent. And we read stories every once in a while of later on that, someone has been proved innocent that way. But yet, the court systems are in place to to punish those who are guilty, and to determine, to somehow determine, when someone is innocent. And like everything else, they're flawed. I mean, and there's nothing perfect, when you really look at human life and human nature and the judging that way in so many ways. But this chapter 35, began with, setting aside certain lands for the Levites, and then talking about murder, unintentional death caused, and then it ends again with, starting on verse 30. If anyone kills another, the murderer will be put to death on the evidence of witnesses, but no one can be put to death on a single witness. And so, remember when Jesus is asked, by, are you the Christ? He can witness to himself, but, they don't believe him because he hasn't got two witnesses, and so it's, you can't just take the word of one without listening to the other. And it's kind of reminded me, talking to someone just the other day, a couple of weeks ago, about a situation, and I had read one side of a story, but I hadn't heard, kind of from the other side, and I was reminded there's two sides to every story, and so that you can't be convicted just on the witness of one person. And God was intelligent, God was smart, He was thinking about that, because it's pretty easy for one person to cause a ruckus and to cause a stink and to start to tell some lies and to get some other people to believe them in that way. So it's you need to have at least two, preferably three witnesses that way, within all of those things that way. And he ends this, about, you shall not defile the land with blood, the land in which I am living with you. And again, that reminder for the people that God is in their midst. And so often today, I mean, we don't really think about that God is in our midst. It is just, it's somewhere out there. It's in the back of our minds, but, to remember that God is in our midst and we are in the presence of God. And then chapter 36, again, deals with tribal property. And you remember that there were some women whose, they're daughters of this man who had died, that, we won't get any land. Well, the designation was, yes, they will get some land. But then here it's, if these daughters marry into another tribe, should that land be going to the other tribe instead? And so then, no, they can't marry into another tribe. But I mean, they can, there are other people in the Jerusalem, the Canaanites, or whatever, not the Canaanites, but in the sons of Manasseh, they can all marry, whichever. They can, within their tribe. And then it talks a little bit about the Jubilee year, but it's safeguarding that the lands that have been given and designated for specific tribes, the 11 tribes, and for the Levites, the cities and stuff, will remain in the possession of those tribes. And, the book ends, these are the commandments and the ordinances that the Lord commanded through Moses to the Israelites in the plains of Moab by Jordan at Jerusalem. And so now, we've come to the end of the Israelites wandering in the wilderness. They have conquered some of the lands and they have inhabited some of the lands. And we're going to, as we read on, especially in Judges and Joshua and on, I mean, Joshua comes the leader, and Joshua is a couple books away yet, but we're going to read more, in the future of the conquest of the lands and the settling and everything. But, the end of the book of Numbers, like the end of the book of Exodus, is the end of Moses' time with the people. And we don't have, we're not told of the death of Moses here at the end of Leviticus as we were at the end of the book of Exodus. But this is You know, the time here now is the end of the wandering in the wilderness and the beginning of life in the promised land.